Good morning. Welcome back to COVID Computer Camp, guys. It's a nice day here. We're getting ready to do our breakout game, but first I wanted to make a little announcement. We've been doing this live stream. By the end of next week, it'll be 12 weeks we've been doing this in a row, and the COVID crisis seems to be kind of winding down a little bit, so we thought this would be a good time to take a vacation, and then we're going to come back with slightly reduced times. We're not going to be doing daily live streams anymore, and I'll be making an announcement next week about what's going to be happening, but we will continue to be doing live streams and coding with you guys, just on a reduced schedule. All right, let's get on to the coding here now. So Breakout seems like a simple game, but it's actually a little bit complicated because of the directions that the balls are moving in. If a ball hits a brick from the side, it doesn't bounce the same way that it bounces if you hit it from the bottom. And this poses some problems. So you're going to see that the code is a little bit more tricky than you thought it would be. I've already got a starter file here with the necessary graphics. We've got the just simple graphics, the block, the paddle that hits it, the ball, and then I've got a block here that says readout, and that has some of the different graphics that will just tell you, give you some feedback on what's happening in the middle of the game, and it also has the game over embedded in it. So there, you really could have drawn these on the spot. There's nothing complicated about them, but we have some sound effects in here as well. Some of these sprites have actual sound effects from old 8-bit arcade games, and I've made some of my own sound effects as well. So we got some weird stuff, some kind of arcadey type sound effects here. So that's all what's in the starter file. Anyway, so we're going to start by programming our paddle, and we're going to be using our mouse controls to move our paddle around today. So when the green flag is clicked, let's go ahead and code that. So when the green flag is clicked, the only thing we really want to do here with our paddle is hide. Why do we want to hide our paddle? Oh, that doesn't look like the paddle. I think I've got things mislabeled here on my info sheet. Yeah, this is not it at all. Oh, I just mislabeled things. Okay, I got this now. So, no, so when we click the green flag, we want to switch our paddle. So our paddle has a couple of, so I'm on the wrong block for starters. I'm on the one called block here, not the one called paddle. They're both rectangles, so you'll have to forgive me for that. Okay, so when the green flag is clicked, we've got a couple of different costumes here. The costumes are for later on. We're going to get a bonus that makes our paddles grow. So we just want to make sure we're on the small paddle, which is the default one. So let's switch our costume. We're going to go to the looks menu, and we're going to go switch costume to costume 1. So right at the beginning, we're going to make sure we're in the right costume. We're going to make sure our paddle's in the right place. I'm just going to drag in a go to block here, and the initial coordinates for that I have are 0x and minus 165y, and that'll position it along the bottom of the screen right along here, and center it as well, just like it is right now. Okay, so far so good. Now we also want to put a forever in there, and so we're going to be tracking our movements left and right using our mouse controls, but we don't want it. I mean, there's a way we can actually glue this to our XY coordinates, right? We can say go to mouse X and mouse Y, and that way, basically everywhere we move our cursor, it'll be stuck to it. But that actually doesn't play very well. It's not very fun, and it looks a little bit weird. So what we're actually going to do here is have it follow a little bit behind your cursor and have a little bit of momentum to it. Just follow along the code I'm doing here, and you'll see it makes for a much smoother, cooler kind of cursor movement scheme. So we're going to grab a block that says change X. We're in motion here. Change X by, Now, what are we going to change it by? We're going to do a little bit of math here. So we're going to change it by where the mouse is. It's x and it's x coordinate. But we're going to slow it down a little bit by using some multiplication. So I just need I need two math symbols here. I'm doing my operators. I'm going to grab a multiplication symbol and a minus sign. So we're going to have the minus sign first, and we're going to embed it inside the other one, and we're going to put those both into change x. So we want to say basically that we're going to move by mouse x minus a value here. So let's go and find our mouse x. So that's the mouse x is the coordinate left or right, the amount left or right that your mouse is on the screen, right? So we're going to go to mouse x minus my current x position. So where is my paddle right now? The X position bubble is right here under movement blocks. So my current position times a fraction. We're going to go times 0.3. And what that's going to do is every time my mouse X is different from my mouse position, it's going to start moving over towards my current mouse X. But it's going to do it at a slower rate, like times 0.3. And it'll actually, because of the way the math is set up here, it'll actually be faster when it's farther away and then slow down as it gets closer. And that's what'll give it that kind of acceleration effect. Let's give that a try. And you'll see it'll feel a little bit like it's on ice. It's kind of sliding around a little bit. And that's what this math is doing to it, right? It's accelerating it so it moves very quickly when you move quickly, and much more slowly when you move slowly and your mouse isn't that far away. Kind of a cool effect. You can see that it works much more smoothly than just mapping out to the x coordinates. Okay, that's all we really need on the cursor right now. We've got some more coding we'll probably end up doing tomorrow on that for making it grow when we hit a bonus block. Okay, let's quickly start programming the ball, and then we'll probably take a little break. So let me save my file. And now let's go over to the ball. So the ball is just a simple little graphic. You can see here, you can change its color around to whatever you want at this point. We can click on the little paint bucket tool and make it pretty much any color. The color isn't we're not detecting this color in anything, so it doesn't really matter whether it's what color it is. There's some blocks here where if you start to mess with their color, it totally will mess up your game, particularly the blocks here, right? The blocks that we're going to make. You can see that Jeffrey set up this elaborate color system here to determine where the ball is going to bounce off of. So when the ball bounces down from this way, it's going to hit the yellow first, and it'll know to bounce back that way. But when a ball's moving in the same direction and hits the red, it'll know not to bounce down, but to bounce up like this, right? So colors can be very important in this game, but my only point was that the ball color doesn't really matter, so feel free to customize that. You can even change the shape of it if you wanted to. It won't really make any difference at all. Okay, so inside the ball, I already have one big long block of code that I've set up for you guys. It was just a very complex thing that had to do with detecting those colors, right? This is the bouncing back code that we're going to be using a little bit later. I can go through it really quickly, but the point is that it was really finicky, and I thought you guys would have trouble putting it together. And it's a little difficult to explain because Jeffrey's doing some different stuff here in the code when he set it up for me. He's making stuff kind of things kind of when they're ready to bounce into the block, he has them go into the block and then jump back out again just to make sure the detection's clear. It's something he did with a little bit of experimentation, and I tried it myself and tried getting rid of these little adjustments that he made, and the game just didn't work. It's hard to explain to beginners why it doesn't work, and you kind of got to experiment to see why. But anyway, please don't destroy this red check collision block. We will be using it later, but it doesn't really have any effect on what we're doing right now. Let's go grab a green flag inside our ball here. And we're going to set up some variables first. So we're keeping track of the number of balls. Most of these variables have already been set up for you. So you don't have to actually create them, but let's just set them up on the screen so that the values are correct when we start the game. The first variable we want to set here is ball count. We're going to set it to 0. That's tracking the number of balls that are on the screen. We have one bonus that will make multiple balls appear on the screen, and we don't want and we want to keep track of the number of them, because of course we're not going to lose our life until all the balls are on the screen. I've already saved my file here. Now the next thing we want to do is to set up is our lives. So let's go set lives to, I'm going to go with 3. You can go with a different number if you like, no big deal. And we're going to set our score to 0, of course. So remember that Scratch does not update the score when you're moving through these. When you restart a game, it will just remember what the old score was. So we always have to reset that. One last variable. Let's go grab another set variable, and we will set the speed of the ball. So it's called ball speed. We'll set that to 4. That's going to be our default speed. The speed of the ball is going to speed up and slow down as the game continues. It's going to automatically get faster, and then there are some bonuses that will slow it down as well. So it just will continue to get harder as you're playing. Okay, once we're done initializing our variable, we're going to send our first ball out. We do that with a broadcast. We could have done that when the green flag was clicked, but when the next ball gets spawned, we need a way to spawn it again. And so that's why we're going to put it into its own broadcast, so that we can send that message from other parts in the script other than when the green flag is clicked. So let's go broadcast a message. We'll go to our events menu here. There's our broadcast message command. Put it in there, and we're going to broadcast a new message that says, well, we're using tennis lingo here, so I'm going to say serve the ball. You guys might know that Pong, the game that Breakout was based on, was originally a computer tennis game, right? So that's why we use kind of tennis terms with these kind of games. Okay, now this is where we can speed up our ball, so that we might as well do that right now. I'm going to go forever. Every 5 seconds we're going to speed up the ball. So I'm going to go wait 5 seconds, and then we're going to change the ball speed here. Variables, change ball speed by just a little bit, 0.1. So every 5 seconds it's just going to get a titch faster. All right, and a little bit more code here to get the ball going, and then we'll have our break. So we've sent that message saying serve the ball. So let's go to when I receive the message. We'll go to our events. We'll say when I receive the message, serve the ball. The first thing we're going to want to do with the ball is we're going to be making clones of ourselves, of our ball. So we need to hide the original one because we don't want it on the screen. We'll go to our looks menu and pick a hide. There we go. And we're going to have it go to its start position. So let's go to our motion blocks. Grab a go to XY command, and we're going to fill in those numbers, which are 0 and minus 180. There we go. And now we're going to wait a few seconds. We're actually going to start spawning the bricks across the top of the screen, so we have to wait a little bit before we can start playing. I'm going to say wait 4 seconds. We're going to point our ball upwards because it's been pointing in all sorts of different directions, and we want to make sure that it's pointed upwards. So we're going to say point in direction, and then move the arrow right up to the top, or just enter a 0 there. And we want to start not by going straight up, but by going off at a slight angle one way or the other. So we're just going to offset it a little bit. We're going to turn. So I'm going to grab a turn right button here, but we're going to put a random number into there. So let's go grab a random number from our operators, pick random 1 to 10. So we're going to want it 20 degrees off to the left or 20 degrees to the right. So I'm just going to pick a random number from minus 20 to 20 here. There we go. And I think we're going to stop this for now. We've got a bunch of other stuff to do to get the ball moving, but I'll get to that right after the break. All right, so we're back. We're going to continue working on this ball. We haven't created our clone yet, eh? So that was the last step that I wanted to do under serve the ball, and for some reason I didn't do that. We went pick random. Okay, we got a couple more blocks to do right here, and then we can continue. So let's get started. All right, so I'm still editing my ball. I'm still under the serve the ball block here. And we just need to do a couple of things. First thing we're going to do is we're keeping track of the number of balls on the screen. So just before we create our first clone, let's change that number of balls. We'll go to our variables, go change ball count by 1. And then we're going to go to our control blocks and grab create a clone of myself. So that's going to make my first ball appear on the screen. What happens when the ball appears on the screen? Well, let's get to that right now, guys. So when I start as a clone is the next block we're looking for. We'll just create some free space here. I'll save my file one more time. All right, so under control here, we have when I start as a clone. That will give our clone its marching orders, tell it what to do when it's created. Now, the master copy of the ball is invisible, so we have to make this guy visible first. Let's show him by going to the looks menu and grabbing a show. Now, we're going to start doing a whole bunch of stuff forever here. So let's go grab a forever block. So we're creating a brand new, oh, actually, we have already created this check block collision, right? So we're going to be checking all the time to see if the ball is colliding. Now, Jeffrey coded this in a little odd way. He had us check for collisions twice, and the way that he explains it to me is that objects only check for collision at the end of their movement. So we want our ball moving fairly quickly, like at a speed of, I think 8 is the final speed here. But that means that it's only going to check for collisions every 8 pixels. He wanted to check more often than that. So what he's actually doing is having the ball move or check for collision, then move a little, then check for collision and move a little, all within the same step. It's all happening simultaneously, and you'll just see it as a smooth movement. But it'll give the computer 2 chances to check and see if the ball has hit a brick. Okay, so we've already got that custom brick here called check block collision. Let's pop one of those in there. And we're going to need a second one in a second, so let's just put both of them in there. And in between these guys, or right after each of these, we want to tell the ball to start moving. So let's go to our motion blocks. We're going to tell our ball to move. So we're just going to move 10, grab it, move 10 steps. We'll put one of those under each of the check block collisions. But we don't want to move a specific speed. We want to move by that variable. So let's go back to our variables. We're going to grab a ball speed block here and put it into each of these. So the ball is going to move 4 steps. It's going to check for collisions, move 4 steps, check for collisions again, and move 4 steps. And then as we start moving faster, it'll move at a faster or a slower speed as the game progresses. Okay. We also want to tell it that if you hit one of the walls or the ceiling, you should bounce off of it. So we're going to go if on edge bounce. That's way over in the motion blocks. Haven't used that one for a while, so it's right down here towards the bottom. If on edge bounce. There we go. And now we want it to collide with the paddle. So we're going to set up some collisions here. The first one's going to be just to make it bounce off of the paddle. I think our ball might actually be moving right now, so let's give it a try. I'm going to click the green. Let me save my file first. Okay, let's click the green flag and see if our button appears after 4 seconds, or our ball. There it is. There it goes. And so it's bouncing around the screen. You can't interact with it yet. Really like that green color. I'm going to go back and change it to red. I think I like that better. Costumes. And let's fill that up with red. There we go. I'm happier with that. All right, so our ball is moving. Now we have to start making it collide with things. Let's start with the paddle. So I'm going to put an if statement inside this forever. Control if. Just checking. I don't think there's many if-elses in this program. So if I'm touching the paddle, we'll go to our sensing block, grab the one that says touching mouse pointer. I'm just going to change that to touching paddle. So what happens when I collide with a paddle? Well, first of all, we want to make a little satisfying beeping sound. We have a lovely arcade sounding beep sound here. That should work quite nicely. So we're going to start that sound. Let's go to our sound menu. Go start sound beep. Now, we're going to, when it hits the paddle, we want it to bounce off of the paddle. And this is what we did when we did the Pong game as well. We want to be able to control it based on the angle that it hits, right? So you want to be able to steer the ball just a little bit by hitting it. Let's say when you hit it with the left side of the paddle, you want to basically bounce it further to the left. When it hits the middle of the paddle, it'll go straighter up. And when it hits the right side of the paddle, it'll wing off in the right direction. Now, as Jeffrey was pointing out to me yesterday, that doesn't make a lot of sense from a physics perspective. That's not the way something would bounce in the real life. But you have to remember this game was originally a tennis game, and so the idea is you were hitting the ball back. They just didn't really have graphics to represent that. So when you hit the ball with the left side, you're actually hitting it with your bat to make it go to the left, and vice versa, right? Okay, so we're going to make that sound. So the way that we're going to figure out what angle it's going to bounce back at is we're going to tell it, as soon as it hits the paddle, point towards the paddle, which means point towards the middle of the paddle. So if you're hitting, let me show you what's happening with a little graphic here. So if you're hitting this paddle over on this side, like this from this angle, it's going to say point at the paddle, and what it's actually pointing at is the middle of the paddle. So it will turn the ball around to face towards the middle of the paddle, which will set it up for a bounce. And then all we have to do is tell it to flip around 180 degrees, and then we'll bounce off in the other direction. And depending on how far you are from the edge of the paddle, the more extreme your angle is going to be. Now we're going to put a little bit of math in here just to make it so that it doesn't bounce off too much, because what you can end up having is an angle that comes off almost sideways, and your ball can go like this instead of going up. So that's the one thing that we're going to do to control it. Okay, so let me implement this. We need a point towards button, which is under motion. Point towards paddle. And then flip. So we're going to turn. Doesn't even matter which turn you use because we're turning 180 degrees. And then we're going to tell it to point in the direction that it's facing, the new direction that it's facing. So we've turned, but we're going to tell it to divide that by 2. And what that's going to do is take those extreme angles, like if we're going at a 179 degree angle, it'll cut it in half and make it an angle a little bit higher up that will allow us to keep the game moving forward instead of having your ball stuck moving sideways. So we're going to point in direction. Let's go to our motion blocks. Point in direction. And we want to put some math in here. So we're going to divide our answer by 2. So we'll grab a division sign, which you'll remember looks like a little slash. And we're going to say direction divided by 2. We can get a direction block from motion, and that just tells us which direction our guy is currently moving in. So our current direction divided by 2. Okay, let's try playing that. You'll see that you have some control over your ball now. So here we go. So my ball's coming down. I'm going to try to hit it on the center. And you see it's a very shallow angle. Now when I hit it from a rougher angle, it will go off to the side. And so we have a little bit of control towards the right, towards the left, make it go right again. And so if you're good at this, you can actually aim your ball around. There's a little bit of a talent involved. It's not perfect, but you're definitely going to want to learn that. Let me save my file here. All right, so that is all we're going to do with the balls for now. We can start with the bricks. We have a little bit more to code on the balls tomorrow, but we're not really worried about that yet. So I'm going to take a little break, and I'll be right back. Okay, so we're ready to start coding our blocks now. As I was saying before, we have to code them to detect the colors that are on the edges so they know how to bounce. We're going to start with a green flag. And we're going to go to our looks menu and grab a hide. So because we're making clones here, we have to hide. And then we're going to grab a forever here. Okay. So here's where we start to generate our grid network of blocks. There's a couple of different things happening simultaneously, so let me try and explain it. So on the outer, we're kind of working from the outside in with this, with a bunch of if statements and stuff. On the outside, the first thing we're going to do before anything else happens is check and see how many blocks we've already destroyed, so that if we haven't destroyed, so once we've destroyed all of them, the next level will respawn, basically, right? So we have to do that before we do anything else, because we don't want, because we want this script to generate the new level of blocks if they're gone. So basically it's checking to see if all our blocks are gone, and if our blocks are all gone, then it's going to draw some new ones using the same draw routine that we're already using. So that's why this is on the outer layer, so that it can know whether it should draw the next round of blocks or not. Inside of that, we're going to start drawing a couple of layers of blocks. We're going to draw rows across and then skip down to the next row and draw rows across like that. And then inside of there, we're going to be picking a random number to determine the color of the blocks. And also we're going to determine which of the blocks are going to be those magic red blocks that give us bonuses. So let's get working on that. So outside, on the outside here, we have an if statement. And it says if score. So we're going to check and see if our score is going to keep track of how many blocks we have on the screen. We have 108 blocks, which is basically the math. 12 across, and then 9 rows of blocks down. So 9 times 12 for all you math whizzes is 108. So if our score is equal to 108, the game will know to go ahead and respawn some new blocks. So let's go if, and we need an equal sign in here. If score, let's go to our variables, score. So if our score is equal to the number we need for a restart, there's a variable here that says score for next restart. There we go. So if our score reaches 108, basically, then the first thing we want to do is change that number. So right now, score for restart, you can see, is 108. But we are going, actually, we should initialize that right now before we forget. So up at the top here, we'll go set score for restart to 108. There we go. And just before we forget to do that, every time we use a new variable, it's really good practice to initialize it so that the game knows what to do when it starts. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do here is change that score for restart variable. So we're going to go change variable, score for restart, and we're going to add 108 to it. So the next time it restarts, it's going to be at 216, and then at 324, etc. So it's just going to keep bumping that number up every time we clean this out. Okay, let's go to the starter position for the first block. So we'll go to motion blocks, grab go to XY, and I'm going to say go to minus 240, and then plus 28. There we go. All right, now we're going to start creating our blocks. So we're going to be doing 9 rows and 12 columns. So we program the number. There's a loop inside a loop. So we're going to run through the rows. We're going to do the first row, and so we need to have the rows on the outside of this repeat loop. We're going to repeat, do the first row, do the second row, do the third row, and then inside of that, we're going to have another loop that says, now we're in the first row, we'll do brick number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, like that. So that's why the vertical or horizontal rows that move with the Y coordinate are the ones that have to go first. So let's grab a repeat block, control, repeat. So we're still inside of the forever and inside the if statement, guys, with all of these blocks. Everything here is going to be inside these two, just to be sure. So we're going to repeat 9 times, which is the number of rows we have here. We're going to set our X to minus 240. Let's go to motion, set X to minus 240. That's going to move it back to its starter position every time it comes around the loop. Now inside here, we're going to start making our new brick. So this is a repeat block here again, control. So it's a little tricky here. So it's a repeat block inside another repeat block with a set X above it, just like this. I'm going to save my file in a second for those of you guys who are stuck watching the live stream. All right, so now inside this block that we repeat 12 times, here's where we're going to make our new blocks. So we're going to go switch costume, looks. So this is where we pick our random block, switch costume to, and we're just going to tell it to switch to a random color. So we're going to go pick a random number, operators, pick a random number from 1 to 5. We want to do something different for the red blocks. So I'm going to show you that in a second. So switch costume from 1 to 5. Then we're going to make our clone. Let's go to our variable, create clone. Sorry, we're going over to our control blocks. We're going to go create clone of myself. And then we're going to slide over. We're going to scooch over the width of that block, which is 40 pixels. And then we're going to make another one. So let's go change X by 40 blocks. Good. And so that's going to finish making our first row. Let's see what that does. It's not going to work properly. I just want to see what we've coded so far here. So are they not showing? I don't have a show in here, eh? Oh, we're setting these up, but they don't actually have a show yet. What we can do is, let's just very quickly, just so we can test this out, I'm going to set up a when I started the clone block here. So under control, when I started the clone, we're just going to tell them to show. We have some other commands later on that are going to go here, but we just want to be able to see the bricks as they're being created. So let's go ahead and do that again. And they're still not being created. So let's have a look. We haven't finished the code here yet. I just thought, so change. We haven't actually, no, we're creating a clone of ourselves. All right. Create a clone of myself, change X by 40. And then, okay, we're going to add the other block here, which is changing our Y to go down to the next row. So let's go ahead and do that as well. So I'm going to go to our motion blocks. We're going to go change Y by 14. Now this one has to be outside of this if statement, but inside the other if statement. So it's a little bit confusing here. So we're going to put it, we're going to count down from the bottom here. We want this one to be 3 layers up, so that the 3 layers below it, just basically one layer below the other one. That's where we're going to change Y by 14. There we go. That's the green flag. I'm still not seeing bricks being made here, eh? So by my understanding, we should have the bricks being formed here. So I need to have a little look at the code, and maybe my friends on the live stream can help me out with that as well. I'll be right back. Okay, guys. So there's a little, it's not a bug in the code. I just think it's something that we haven't finished implementing properly, and so this is not working. Let's go have a look at the code, and I'll show you what I mean. So we're not generating our blocks right now because this if statement is not true. So it's not looking at what's inside of it here. If score is equal to score for next restart, then we change it. I think the problem is the score for the next restart should be 0 at the beginning. Let me try that out just for larks here, and then click the green flag. Yes. Okay, and then as soon as we go through the if statement the first time, it increases it to 108. Okay, that's the part that didn't make sense. So actually we are good here now. So once we click that variable, we're good. So let's have a look at our bricks here. Beautiful. So they're being formed properly, and you can see that we're bouncing off of them. We're making a beep sound, and that's all working very nicely right now. The problem is, okay, so our game is working properly now. We just have to get some stuff going with the bricks. Let's see what time it is right now. It's 11:52. Yeah, let's keep going for a little bit longer, and we'll just see if we can get this collision going properly inside the blocks. So, oh, and there's one other thing we have to do inside this code here before we get moving. So we've got our multicolored blocks being created, but I also want to create those magic red blocks. So let's take care of those first. So inside this if statement, right before we create the clone of ourselves, we want to put another if statement. We're just going to pick a random number, and if that number is random number is set up properly, I mean, if we get the right roll on that dice, then we're going to create one of those magic blocks. We're going to turn one of the other blocks into a red one. Now I want to pop it in here. It's not going to happily go into this place, so I'm going to give you guys the best solution for doing that. I'm going to grab right here in this repeat block, I'm going to grab the 2 blocks that I want at the bottom here, create clone of myself and change x by 40, and attach them to the bottom of this if statement, and then pop this back into the repeat like that. So this is what it should look like: switch costume, followed by an if statement, followed by create clone and change x. So inside this if statement, I'm going to pick another random number and put it inside an equal sign. So let's go grab an equal sign, and we're going to pick random number from 1 to 25. So I'm going to have a 1 in 25 chance. I'm going to put a 1 here of a red brick appearing on the block. If you want to change that probability, if you want more or less red bricks in your game to change the difficulty, you can do that. So inside that if statement, we need to go switch costume under looks, switch costume, which is, man, I'm not seeing things today. Switch costume to costume 6. So now you can see that we've got a bunch of red blocks being created here. And we have one more special set of blocks here that will make them glow. So we might as well do that while we're making red blocks. So we're going to grab another when I start as a clone. Control, when I start as a clone. And we're going to grab a forever. So this is just, all this code is going to do is make these red blocks glow a little bit, kind of pulsate. We're going to go if costume number is equal to 6. So we'll go if, and then grab an equal sign. And then go to our looks menu. Let me save my file, just in case anyone's impatient here. So if our costume number, let's go to our looks menu and grab costume number, which is right here towards the bottom. If costume number is equal to 6, then start pulsating. So we're going to grab a repeat 10 loop. Let's go grab repeat 10. And every time we go around that 10 times around a loop, we're going to change our brightness effect by 5. So we basically want our brightness to go up by 50% and down by 50% each time. So we'll go change brightness effect. We'll change brightness effect by 5. Now I'm going to move my cursor over that repeat block and duplicate. And when we come back down the other side of the curve here, we're going to change our brightness by -5 to bring it back to normal again. Let's go have a look at that. Click green flag. You can see, yeah, and there's our magic red blocks. You can see that they are glowing red a little bit, just to tell you that there's something special going on with those guys. You could do something different. We could make them go darker instead. We go -5 to +5 here. Let's see what that looks like, just out of curiosity. So that's just a different kind of glowing. Or you could change the number. You could have it glow by 10 to turn totally white, and then -10. So that's a much different effect as well. So you guys go with whatever you think you like. I'm going to stick with my original numbers, which is 5 and -5. And I just wanted to demo for you guys as well how that probability works as well. So if I change this probability to like 3 out of 25, for example, you'll see that we have much more of these red bricks appearing on the screen. It's random, so we might not have any of them. What? Did we actually get... Oh, what I did was okay. So it has to be 1 to 25. If 1 to 25 equals... Oh, we would have to have a greater than sign to change that probability. So we can't just change one number to change that probability. We would have to say if pick random number was greater than or less than 3, for example, then it would be 1 or 2 or less than 4. So anyway, you can change that probability. Maybe just, it looks like we're running out of time here. So let me just show you this quickly and then we'll probably sign off. So if I want more of these bonus bricks here, I'll just change that to a less than sign. And I'll say, if my random number from 1 to 5 is less than 4, then we'll make a red brick. So now you'll see much more red bricks on the screen. Now, I wouldn't start messing with this number until later on, of course, because you want to see what those red bricks actually do to the game. There's a couple of them that, for example, will slow down the game, and if too many of them come up, then you're going to end up slowing the ball down to such an extent that your game will basically stop. Okay, so it looks like we're basically out of time for today. Let's, rather than running over, we'll just call it quits here. I'm going to save my file one more time. So tomorrow we will be looking at this very complicated code for making the bricks bounce in different directions. And we're also going to be adding those bonus bricks that make different stuff come down off the screen, or there's a whole bunch of different, it was 4 different things that can happen when you hit those red bricks, and we're going to program each one of them a little bit differently. So remember, I would love to see your Kahoot questions for tomorrow. Otherwise, actually, I probably haven't mentioned to you guys on the edited stream that we're doing Kahoots tomorrow, so just forget about that. Anyway, so it was really lovely doing this. I'm looking forward to finishing this tomorrow, and we will be hosting a Kahoot afterwards. So feel free to join us by sticking with the live stream after the coding lesson tomorrow. So meanwhile, we'll see you guys around.